Hey, hey. Okay, so we're still doing some linear equation stuff. So our favorite linear equation form, our favorite form is y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form. That's the one we use the most in this year in math, but also like most math classes. This is the form that you're going to be using a lot. And then we've just recently learned about point slope form. And it's not like this is unnecessary because a lot of people prefer to plug in information to point slope form and then convert it to slope intercept. So like if I gave you a slope and a point, you could plug it in to this formula and then rearrange it and convert it to slope intercept form. Some teachers even prefer that as well. Okay, so you can totally do that. That's a reason why it's useful, I guess. And then standard form is going to be the last form that we learn. There's those three main ones. So slope intercept form, point slope form, and then now today you're learning standard form. So standard form is capital A and then X, that's just a regular X, plus capital B and then a regular Y. Okay, and all of our linear equations, by the way, all of your linear equations have an X and a Y, right? Because that's what a linear equation is, relationship of X and Y. So we have AX plus BY equals capital C. AX plus BY equals capital C. Okay, what the heck? First thing I notice, and maybe you notice, is there's no M. There's no slope. Slope intercept form had slope in it. Point slope form had slope in it. Standard form doesn't have an M. Okay, or else it would have slope in the title of it. So this form, this format of an equation doesn't give us the slope. And that's kind of the downside for me, because when I have something in slope intercept form, I can easily tell the slope, and it's also giving me a point that it lands on, which is the intercept. Okay. Slope intercept form also gives me, or excuse me, point slope form gives me the slope as well as a point that falls on the line. But for standard form, I'm seeing this A, B, and C. Well, none of those is slope, and none of those are really a point on the line. Hate to tell you that. A, B, and C, what you're going to write right here is A, B, C are integers. Integers are just, they're not fractions. Oops, I didn't mean to go over the X, but whatever. A, B, and C are integers. Integers are whole numbers, can be negative or positive. So no decimals, no fractions. Okay, that's just kind of standard for standard form is A, B, and C are going to be whole numbers, but they could also be negative. Technically, if you want to be super technical, and I'm not going to be this technical, but A should always be a positive integer. B and C can be negative though. Okay, a little bit more than we care to know though. So let's actually jump into graphing, because I can't do the whole thing where tell me a slope, tell me a point, because it's not clearly given to you. So we're going to go straight into how to graph these kind of. So graphing, standard form. So one way, which I'm not going to write on paper right now, but we will do it. One way is you could rearrange this and change it, convert it into slope intercept form, and then graph that line. And that's what I do most of the time, and you'll be doing that too. But I do want to show you another way, and it's probably the coolest feature about standard form. Some people just love standard form because it tells you this stuff. So please write this sentence down, and then we'll talk about it. Standard form is cool because standard form is cool because you can find the X and Y intercepts pretty quickly. Okay. Now, pretty quickly means with practice. With practice, you can look at standard form and you can find that X and Y intercepts pretty fast. Okay. That's probably the benefit of standard form is you can find the X and Y intercepts. Now, here's the thinking behind it. If you know where it hits the Y axis and you know where it hits the X axis, you can connect those points and you got yourself a line. Okay. So that's most of the time how you're going to be graphing standard form. So we're going to put a graph kind of on the right-hand side of your notebook, please. And we need to be able to fit down to -6. Doesn't really matter how much you go in the positives. -6 on the y-axis and go at least out to, let's just say 6, +6 on the x. Okay, so hopefully you got your graph set up. I didn't quite make it +6, but I'm okay. I already know what points are going there. Okay, so I'm going to give you an equation written in standard form. So here's your first example of standard form. 3x minus 2y equals 12. Okay, so I know this is in standard form because visually I see that the x and y terms are on the left, and then I have just a regular number on the right. Okay, that's how you know it's in standard form. Okay, so we can figure out the x and y intercepts pretty easily. We're going to do a detailed description right here, and then I'll kind of show you the cheat method. Okay, but something we really got to make sure you understand. So I want you to write this statement. Y-intercepts have 0 for x. Y-intercepts have 0 for x. What I mean is if you were to plot a point anywhere on the y-axis, all of your y-intercepts fall on the y-axis, right? If you were to plot a point anywhere, like say here, your ordered pair would be 0, 3. If it was here, it'd be 0, 1. If it was down here, it'd be 0, -5. So all of those have an x value of 0, meaning you know it's going to start with 0, something, right? Okay, so here's the thinking. If I want to quickly find the x and y intercepts, well, for y-intercept, I would just plug in 0 for x and then solve for y. So I want you to tell yourself that here. Plug in 0 for x, solve for y. Okay. So here's what that would look like mathematically. So we take this equation. I'm going to take this equation, but for x, what am I going to plug in for x? Well, I'm going to plug in 0. 0 is x in this case. And then I'm going to copy down the rest. Okay, now 3 times 0. What's 3 times 0? You better not say 3. 3 times 0 is 0. So I'm not even going to write a 0 in the next line because 0 minus 2y is just going to be -2y. So really plugging in a 0 there basically cancels out that whole term. And so I'm left with -2y equals 12. Well, I'm solving for y, so I want to get y by itself. So I divide both sides by -2. What do I get for y? -6. So I plugged in 0 for x into this equation, and then I just kept solving for y. Get y by itself. Divide both sides by -2, and you get it. Y equals 6. So that means I can put this little -6 right here. Your y-intercept is 0, -6. So go ahead, plot that point on your graph. 0, -6. So that's the y-intercept. Now we're going to do the same sort of thing, and we're going to figure out what the x-intercept is. So for y-intercepts, they have 0 for their x values. X-intercepts have 0 for what? They have 0 for their y values. Okay, so let's think about that. X-intercepts fall on the x-axis. So right here, this is -4, 0, -4, comma 0. Okay, this is -1, comma 0. This is 3, comma 0. So all of their y values are 0. Okay, so from my ordered pair, I know it's going to be something, comma 0. And I'm going to figure out what that x value is. That's the whole point of this. Okay, so here is our strategy. We plug in 0 for which variable here? Plugging in for x or for y? When solving for the x-intercept, you're going to plug in 0 for y and then solve for x. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to copy down this original equation, but I'm going to plug in a 0 for y right there. So I would have 3x minus 2 times 0 equals 12. But 0 times anything is just 0. So -2 times 0, that would just be 3x plus 0. I'm not even going to write it. I'm just going to show that it cancels. This whole term cancels. -2 times 0 is just 0. So I'd have 3x plus 0, which is just 3x. So I know I'm skipping steps there, but I think y'all are fine. Okay, and then to get x by itself, I just divide by that 3 on both sides. And what does x equal? 4. So I plug that into my intercept right there, 4, comma 0. So go to 4, comma 0 right there, boom. So you got your 2 points. You only need 2 points to make a line, right? Take a ruler, take something next to you that has a straight edge, connect those, put points at the ends. Okay, now, when I said pretty quickly, you're thinking, you just straight up lied to us, Meineke, that was not pretty quickly. There is a trick. I mean, you just need to know that plugging in 0 is going to cancel out that term, just like right here. Plugging in 0 cancels out that term completely. So there is a trick. You actually use your fingers. So I'm going to show that to you. If I want to know what the y-intercept is, I'm going to plug in 0 for x. But actually, if I plug in 0 for this x, it cancels out that term. So I'm literally just going to cover up that term. And I'm going to do a quick calculation and solve for y. Divide by -2, divide by -2, y equals -6. So then I go and I take my pencil and I plot my point at -6. It's called the cover-up method, okay? You do need to know mathematically what's happening though. All right, so for x-intercept, the y value is 0. Well, when I plug in a 0 there, it just -2 times 0 is nothing. So basically that just gets covered up. And I'm left with 3x equals 12. Divide by 3, x equals 4. So I'd go to 4 on the x-axis and I'd plot a point. Connect them. Okay? Okay. If you would rather, do the math part of it, I totally get it. Okay? And I will do the math for you in the steps here. We're just going to practice that 2 more times. It's not something that I need you to master right now. It's just kind of useful, I guess. So find x and y intercepts. Okay, so 1 and 2. So number 1, here's your equation in standard form. 2x minus y equals -8. Now, if you feel pretty confident with the little cover up thing, try it out, do it, okay? I am gonna do just like old school, plug in 0 and solve. I'm gonna do it algebraically. So I'm gonna start with x-intercept just because, okay? So when I am solving for an x-intercept, that means my y value is gonna be 0. So I'm gonna put my final answer like right there. Okay, so I'm going to actually be rewriting this, but I'm going to plug in a 0 for the y. So that would be 2x minus 0 equals -8. So I'm going to keep solving that down. This just cancels, it disappears. 2x minus 0 is just 2x. So I have 2x equals -8. Divide both sides by 2, and I get x equals -4. So my final answer here is -4, 0. Now let's try the cover up method. I'm plugging 0 in for y. So basically that term disappears. 2x equals -8, divide by 2, x equals -4. We got it. Okay. Let's try the y-intercept. Y-intercept is going to have a 0 for x. We have to solve for y. So I'm going to plug in 0 for x. 2 times 0 is nothing. So I have -y equals -8. Divide both sides by -1. Y equals +8. So I'm going to plug in my +8 right here. So 0, 8 is my y-intercept. And now let's check it doing our little trick. Okay. So when I want a y-intercept, I plug in 0 for x. So basically I cover up the x term. I get y by itself, so I divide by -1, and that is going to equal +8. Okay, so it's a trick, but it's really just math. Okay, next one, 4x plus 2y equals 10. All right, x and y intercepts here. Let's start with x-intercept. Okay, so when I want an x-intercept, that is going to have a 0 for y. So I'm going to plug in 0 for y. You could do the cover up method. This one I am going to write down algebraically because the math is a little bit weird here. 4x plus 2 times 0 equals 10. 2 times 0 is nothing. So really we're looking at 4x equals 10. Divide by 4, and you go, Ms. Meineke, we can't do that. 4 doesn't go into 10. You know what? It's not going to be a whole number here. Okay, so the question is, do we just simplify? Do we divide by 2 and call that 4 or 5 halves? And fourth's the same thing as 5 halves. Do we leave it as a fraction? Do we change it to a decimal? When you are writing slope, you want a rise and a run. So you want to leave it as a fraction. But this, is this slope? No, it's just a location on the graph. So decimal is fine here as long as it's a nice decimal. So if you take your calculator, 5 divided by 2, that is 2.5. That's a pretty nice number. So I would be fine if you just left that as 2.5. Okay, x equals 2.5. Could you leave it as 5 halves, 0? Of course you can. Okay, so 2.5 or 2.5, 0 is your x-intercept. And I would like you to pause the video and try to find the y-intercept. So you're going to plug in 0 for x. So you have 4 times 0 plus 2y equals 10. 4 times 0 is nothing. 2y equals 10 means we divide by 2 on both sides. And we get y equals 5. So our y-intercept is 0, 5. Okay. If you're looking at this going, I'm not super confident, that's okay. We will practice in Zoom. And honestly, this next piece is probably the most important part anyway, okay? So this is going to be converting. We're going to convert from standard form to slope intercept form. Okay, so we want it to be in y equals mx plus b format. So the note I want you to write to yourself here is get y isolated on the left side. Okay, get y isolated on the left side. That is your overall goal here. Okay, so we'll call this 3 and 4. Okay, so we're gonna start with standard form. Here you go, 3x minus 2y equals 12. Now, this equation was right here. We already graphed it. Now, if you look at this graph, you should be able to write it in standard form. So let's do that really quick. I see an intercept of -6, so I know it's going to be y equals something x and then -6 because that's the intercept. Slope, it's going up 6 and over 4. Up 6 over 4, that can reduce down. That's 3 over 2. So that's the slope intercept form. Okay, meaning when I convert this equation, I should be getting y equals 3/2 x minus 6. So it's a good little check for ourselves. Okay, so what the heck do we do here? Well, in the last lesson, you did some distributive property and then you added or subtracted a number. But there's no parentheses, so we're not going to do any of that. But I want this y right here. I want this y all by itself on the left-hand side, meaning I want to get rid of the 3x, and then I also want to get rid of this -2 that's multiplying by it. Which one do I cancel out first? I cancel out the one that's not attached to it. So I'm going to get rid of the 3x as a term. I'm going to cancel out the 3x. I can do that as long as I follow the golden rule. Whatever I do on one side, I do to the other. So here's what that would look like. I'm literally going to subtract 3x because 3x minus 3x is 0x, aka 0, aka nothing. It cancels out to nothing. Whatever I do on one side, I have to do to the other. Now, it might seem weird putting it underneath the 12, and I didn't really put it underneath the 12 completely, because 12 minus 3x, you can't actually subtract those. They're not like terms. So here's what you're left with. You're left with a -2y equals, and then you literally can just write 12 minus 3x because you can't subtract those. 12 minus 3x is just 12 minus 3x, okay? But if I want this in slope intercept form, y equals mx plus b, notice how the x term is closer to the equal sign. I kind of want to put that -3x right here and move the 12 back here. That 12 is positive, so I could rewrite it as -3x plus 12. So literally, I just rearranged that, okay? Is y isolated though? No, I want it all by itself. So to cancel out that -2, it's timesing by y right now. I do the opposite. I divide by -2. Whatever I do on one side, I have to do to the other. Now, careful, careful, look. I have to divide everything by -2. Every single little term has to get divided by -2 in order for this to be legal, okay? So 2's cancel out here. I'm left with y. -3 over -2. Well, I'm going to leave it as 3/2 because I want to see the rise and the run. It's a slope, so I'm going to leave it as a fraction. Negative divided by negative is positive, so it just turns to positive 3/2. Leave the x. 12 divided by -2 is -6. I get y equals 3/2 x minus 6, which is exactly what we got right there. Okay, so I just want to show you that I'm not lying to you. Okay. Okay, so we need practice, and this is what we're practicing mainly in Zoom. But let's see if you can get the hang of this. Here's your next one. 2x minus y equals -8. So literally, we're just going to take that one that we did right there. Okay. 2x minus y equals -8. So first thing we do, we want to get rid of the x term, move it to the other side. So how I do that is I subtract that x term on both sides. Okay, you can do the little line thing if you need to. Okay, so what are we left with? Well, that cancels. I'm left with -y equals, and then here I would just be kind of smart and put your x term closest. That's a -2x, that's a -8. So -y equals -2x minus 8. Do I want a -y? No, slope-intercept form has a positive y isolated on the left. So what do I divide by here? Well, there's a secret one. So I'm going to divide by -1. And remember, you got to divide every single term by that -1 to keep it balanced. All right, so that cancels. I'm left with y. -2 divided by -1 is +2. So I have 2x there. -8 divided by -1, +8. Final answer, y equals 2x minus 8. So you subtract the x term and then you get y by itself. So you divide by whatever's attached. 5 and 6. 6 is going to be the one that you do for like entry tasks. Okay. But on 5, I want you to pause the video and try it and then play the video to check it. So you have x plus 5y equals 10. So we're changing this to slope-intercept form. Get y by itself. Okay, so let's check your work. So I hope you started by subtracting this x term on both sides. That would be left with 5y equals, and then you can write 10 minus x. I'm going to put my x term where it belongs, which is right here. That's a -x and a +10, so -x plus 10. And then I just need to get that, get rid of the 5, divide by 5. Whatever I do to one little term though, I need to do it. I need to make sure if I'm dividing by something, every single little term has to be divided by that. If I was multiplying, every little term has to be multiplied by it, okay? So the 5's cancel, I'm left with y, cool, that was the whole point. Now we just gotta be super smart when we're finishing this out. There is a secret little 1 right there, agree? So what am I going to put in front of the x? I'm going to put the fraction -1/5. And then 10 divided by 5 is 2. So final answer, y equals -1/5 x plus 2. Okay, try this out. Just showing your best effort here. 10x minus 2y equals 6. 10x minus 2y equals 6. Change that into slope-intercept form. That is your entry task question. Good luck, and don't worry, we'll practice more in Zoom, okay?